In today's video, we're going to be talking about the various flagships of the Mon Calamari Admiral Ackbar. The first video in this series on Hera Syndulla went up last week. In that video, I only focused on the ships that she commanded as an actual flagship, plus the Ghost, but based on feedback in future videos, I'm going to try to include every ship directly commanded by characters in any capacity where information is available, so I'll probably do a supplementary video for Hera on some of those extra ships, like the Geist. For Admiral Ackbar, well, he was active as early as the Clone Wars, based on his involvement in the Clone Wars cartoon. Most of his strategic training came at the hands of Will of Tarkin, who kept Akbar as a slave for much of the Imperial period, before a raid on the Grand Moff shuttle freed him, causing him to join the Alliance. Ackbar pressed his people to join the rebels and help build a fleet for the Undergun Navy with little success at first, but Ackbar himself began service in charge of what little the rebellion had from the bridge of his first mentioned command ship, the Mc80 Independence. The Independence was a similar type of ship to the later, more famous flagship of Ackbar, Home 1. It was present at the Battle of Endor, but while serving as Ackbar's flagship, it was most famously the rebel flagship at their first major naval victory, the Battle of Turkana, 1 year before the Battle of Yavin. This battle from the Star Wars X-Wing game series saw Independence and 6 other Mon Calamari ships, supported by 8 Corellian corvettes, Nebulon Bs, and Gallifreys, take on 10 Imperial Star Destroyers. This was the first time the rebels had been able to make full use of the new X-Wings, and by exploiting an unwillingness to adapt on the Imperials' part, and Ackbar's thorough knowledge of Imperial tactics, along with an element of surprise from their new weapons, Ackbar was able to take down the 10 Star Destroyers commanded by Captains Samuel Lennox and Firmus Piet. While Ackbar would transfer his flag to Home 1 soon after the evacuation of Hoth, around 3 years after Yavin, Independence would continue in New Republic service until at least the Yuzon Vong War, which took place 25 to 29 years after the Battle of Yavin. Home 1 served not just as a mobile base for the Rebel Alliance like Independence before it, but became Ackbar's signature command ship and synonymous with the Admiral, having been his flag at the Battle of Endor in Episode 6. The exact specifications of the ship and other ships of its class are somewhat inconsistent. There are almost as many different sizes given for the ship as possible, with some sources saying 1200 meters, some 1300, some 1400, and if you scale based on the movie model and other appearances like Star Wars Empire at War, you can get a few different sizes there as well. Mostly based on movie scaling, particularly scaling against the hangar and the ship, you get a length close to 3000 meters, give or take a couple hundred meters in either direction. Like with so many things in Star Wars, it's hard to point to one of these as being the true correct figure, so really it depends on what application you're looking at it in, but I typically prefer to lean more towards that kind of scaling from the movies. In any case, Home 1 was Ackbar's flagship up until at least the return of Emperor Palpatine, 11 years after the Battle of Yavin. After Endor, it served as Ackbar's command ship throughout the various campaigns into the core to take Coruscant, as well as against Grand Admiral Thrawn and other Imperial warlords. Ackbar would switch his flagship to other ships throughout the following decade, but the fact file also states it was his command ship until his retirement, which happened 21 years after Yavin, so he seems to have gone to the ship again after switching to the ones we'll be talking about next. The ship Home 1 does get mentioned in the novel I, Jedi as well, set while Ackbar's flag is presumably on one of the other ships, so we know it stayed in active service even if Ackbar wasn't always serving on it. The next 2 flagships we'll talk about together, as there's few details about them and they share a class. First is the Defiance and then the Galactic Voyager, the first and second ships of the powerful MC90 class respectively. While all Mon Calamari ships have some differences, which depictions of these 2 show, as you can see on screen now, they were about 1250 meters and packed significant power for their size. Defiance, the first ship of the class, was Ackbar's flagship in the Dark Empire comics, where it scattered out the Imperial territory in the deep core. Following Shadowhand, at some point Ackbar transferred to the Galactic Voyager, his flagship in the Jedi Academy trilogy, and Darksaber in about 12 ABY. We don't know what happened to Defiance at this point, though. In Darksaber, Galactic Voyager survives what is, in my opinion, one of the silliest battles in Star Wars at Yavin, where Voyager and 4 Corellian gunships fight the Executor-class Night Hammer and dozens of Star Destroyers, with its shield tanking fire from all of them to some extent. While we don't know what happens with the Defiance, we do know what happens with the Galactic Voyager, at least for a few decades. It's still in service throughout the Vong War and into the Legacy of the Force series, where it's mentioned as Admiral Cha Nyathal's flagship at the Battle of Galador 8. For the next few years, until about 16 or 17 years after the Battle of Yavin, Akbar was involved in several other conflicts, but because of how events get covered, mostly in sourcebook mentions or books where he's not a primary character, we don't really know whether he stayed with Voyager or moved back to Home 1 for this period. We do know that by 17 ABY, he had been given command of the Guardian, an Executor-class star dreadnought captured by the New Republic from Admiral Drommel of the Aplovis sector. I'm showing a picture of the Lusenki here, the other captured New Republic superstar destroyer under the command of Wedge Antilles. We don't know if Guardian would have had the same symbols added as the Lusenkia did, but it seems reasonable that she may have. A lot of Imperial ships that were captured by the New Republic do seem to have had the Starbird added. Guardian was part of Akbar's Third Fleet for what were known as the Imperial Skirmishes of 17 ABY. In these offensives, some of the last fights between the New Republic and the Imperial forces under Gilad Pellaeon, Grand Admiral Pellaeon attacked from the northern Imperial territories, and Admiral Dalla attacked from the core with a group of United Warlord forces, similar to what she had done before in Darksaber. Garm Bel Iblis beat Dalla's forces at Columbus, forcing her to return to hiding, while the 3rd and 5th New Republic fleets fought back Pellaeon in the north, most notably at Anx Minor, where Akbar used Guardian to destroy the experimental testbed ship being used by the Imperials, Raquel. The explosions from the Raquel damaged one of the 2 dreadnoughts that Pellaeon had used as a secret weapons in the campaign, Megador, although the other ship, Dominion, was relatively unharmed by this. All 3 of those ships, being the Guardian, Dominion, and Megador, under the command of the New Republic and Empire separately, went on to serve alongside each other in the Galactic Alliance during the final days of the Yuuzhan Vong War. Guardian was in charge of leading a defense force on Mon Calamari against the Yuuzhan Vong, while the Mon Calamari dreadnought Viscount led an attack on Vong-held Coruscant. By the time the New Republic was at war with the Yuuzhan Vong and all of Akbar's prior flagships were fighting in this war, Akbar himself had been long retired, having retired in 21 ABY. The years of his career after the 17 ABY skirmishes are not the most clear on where his flagship was. These are some of the more empty years of the Star Wars Legends period, though it does seem like he was back on Home 1 by its end, based on the Star Wars fact files we mentioned earlier. He did temporarily return to his position in an advisory role prior to his death, in order to help his successor as Supreme Commander, Cian Sov, organize the war against the Vong, though he never set fin on a ship for this. He died of natural causes before the war's conclusion, and I tried to find out what they used to cover his casket. It's a tarp. That's it for a breakdown of Akbar's flagships. If there's another topic you'd like to see me cover, including another character who you want to see a flagship breakdown for, please leave it in the comments. If you've enjoyed, consider leaving a like or subscribing for more. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.